Everyone loves the chill friend, the one who never raises their voice, never starts drama, and just absorbs everything. Society calls you mature, but what if I told you that never getting angry isn't a sign of peace? It is a survival mechanism, and underneath that flawless, low-maintenance mask, your nervous system is silently screaming. Welcome to the dark psychology of the high-functioning avoider. Think about the last time someone crossed your boundaries. Did you scream? Did you demand an apology? Or did you just smile, swallow the lump in your throat, and convince yourself that it wasn't a big deal? We live in a world that glorifies the low-maintenance person. You are the easygoing partner, the employee who never complains, the friend who is always there to listen to everyone else's chaos, but mysteriously, never seems to have any problems of your own. People praise you for being a rock. They say things like, "I love how nothing ever bothers you." But here is the brutal truth of deep psychology. A lack of anger does not equal a presence of peace. There is a massive, life-altering difference between emotional regulation and emotional detachment. When a truly regulated person faces conflict, they process the anger, communicate it safely, and move on. But you don't process the anger, you exile it. You have become so incredibly skilled at anticipating what others need you to be that you have entirely severed the connection to your own emotional core. Let's be brutally honest for a second. You aren't actually chill, you are terrified. Somewhere along the line, you learned that having needs makes you a burden, that expressing anger or disappointment makes you unlovable or unsafe. So you fold yourself into smaller and smaller pieces, just to keep the peace in the room. But keeping the peace externally means starting a vicious war internally. And you know this is true, because while everyone else sees the calm, collected version of you during the day, you are the one left alone, with that crushing, unexplainable emptiness at 2 a.m. That hollow feeling in your chest isn't just sadness, it is the ghost of every boundary you never defended, and every word you swallowed to keep someone else comfortable. Your chillness is not a personality trait. It is a highly sophisticated, invisible armor. And the scariest part? It is working so well that even you forgot you are wearing it. Let's take a step away from psychology for a moment and look at pure biology, because the truth is, your silence is not a conscious choice. It is a biological hijack. When an animal in the wild is cornered by a predator, it has a few options. It can fight. It can run. But if the predator is too big and escape is completely impossible, the animal does something fascinating. It drops to the ground, its heart rate plummets, and it plays dead. It completely shuts down to survive. Now, bring that back to your human life. When an argument gets heated, or when someone you love gets too close, too loud, or too demanding of your emotional energy, you don't fight. You don't run away physically. You play dead emotionally. In neuroscience, specifically within the framework of the polyvagal theory, this is known as a dorsal vagal shutdown. It is the ultimate emergency brake in your nervous system. When your brain detects a severe threat, and for someone with avoidant tendencies, intense emotional conflict, or suffocating intimacy is registered as a life or death threat, it sends a rapid signal down your vagus nerve. If your brain calculates that fighting back or explaining yourself will only make the situation more dangerous or chaotic, it simply flips the breaker. Think about what actually happens inside your body during a confrontation. Your partner might be raising their voice. They might be crying, begging you to just say something, to just share how you feel, and a tiny, rational part of you knows you should speak, but you can't. It is not that you are stubbornly, maliciously withholding your thoughts to punish them. It's that the language center of your brain, Broca's area, has literally gone offline. You experience what I call the hollow smile. Your physical body is still standing in the room. You might even be nodding, saying, "Okay," or "I'm fine," just to make the noise stop. But inside, the electricity has been cut. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your internal world goes entirely numb. You feel detached, almost as if you are floating outside of your own body, watching the argument happen to someone else, through a pane of thick glass. People on the outside see this wall of ice. Because you look so calm, they assume you don't care. They think you are cold, apathetic, or entirely unaffected by their pain. But here is the most important thing you need to hear today. The realization that changes everything. You are not cold. You are overloaded. A circuit breaker in a house doesn't trip because there is no electricity. It trips because there is too much electricity. It shuts down because if it doesn't, the entire house will burn to the ground. Your emotional shutdown is exactly the same. It is your body's desperate, automatic attempt to keep you from catching fire from the sheer, overwhelming weight of the emotion. It is a brilliant, but tragically isolating defense mechanism. But to understand why your brain views a simple relationship disagreement as a lethal predator, we have to rewind the tape. We have to look at the environment that programmed your nervous system to be this way in the first place. If your biology is the hardware that shuts you down, your childhood is the software that programmed it to do so. Whenever the word trauma is mentioned, society has trained us to picture shattered glass. We picture screaming matches, physical abuse, broken homes, and visible scars. And because you might not have those visible scars, you have probably spent your entire adult life gaslighting yourself. You tell yourself, my childhood was fine. I had food, I had a roof over my head. My parents paid for my education. I have no right to be this messed up. But in psychology, we know a devastating truth. Trauma is not just the terrible things that happen to you. Often, the deepest trauma is the good things that never happened. There is a silent epidemic in modern families called childhood emotional neglect, or CEN. It is invisible, it leaves no bruises, but it completely rewires how a child gives and receives love. I want you to imagine yourself at 6 or 7 years old. You are overwhelmed. Maybe you had a terrible day at school. Maybe you are terrified of the dark. Or maybe you are just feeling that intense, messy sadness that children feel. You go to the adults in your life looking for an anchor. But what happens? Maybe your parents were physically present, but emotionally bankrupt. Maybe they were constantly exhausted from work. Maybe they were dealing with their own unhealed trauma, or fighting a silent war in their marriage. When you brought them your messy, inconvenient emotions, you weren't met with a hug and the words, "I understand, it's okay to be sad." Instead, you were met with annoyance. Go to your room until you can stop crying. You're being too sensitive. Stop making a big deal out of nothing. Or worse, you were met with complete, deafening indifference. A child's brain is a brilliant survival machine. When a child reaches out for emotional connection and is repeatedly met with a blank wall or punishment, they make a subconscious, life-altering calculation. The child realizes, my emotions cause stress to the people who are supposed to keep me alive. If I am sad, they pull away. If I am angry, they get mad. Therefore, to be safe in this house, I must not have any needs. So you adapted. You swallowed your tears. You learned to self-soothe in the quiet of your bedroom. You became the good kid, the easy kid, the independent one, who never asked for help with homework, who never threw tantrums, who managed everything completely alone. Your parents probably praised you for being so mature for your age. They bragged to their friends about how chill and independent you were. But you weren't mature. You were just a child who had given up on being comforted. You learned the most toxic lesson a human being can learn, that love is conditional on your silence, that you are only valuable when you are not a burden. And that is why, today, when your partner gets upset with you, or when a conflict arises, you don't fight back. Because deep down, underneath the adult body and the professional job, you are still that 7-year-old child in an empty room, holding your breath, terrified that if you show your true feelings, everyone will leave. Let's shift the lens for a moment, because the tragedy of the high-functioning avoider doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It happens in the living room. It happens in the bedroom. It happens to the person who is trying to love you. If you are watching this because you are in love with someone who shuts down, I need you to listen very closely. In the beginning of the relationship, their emotional distance didn't look like a wall. It looked like strength. You were likely drawn to them because they were so incredibly stable. In a world full of chaotic, needy people, here was someone who was independent, fiercely self-reliant, and completely drama-free. They were your rock. But as the relationship progressed, you hit the crescent moon trap. They showed you a beautiful sliver of who they were, and you fell in love with the promise of the full moon. But the full moon never came, as you naturally tried to deepen the intimacy, asking them about their fears, wanting to merge your lives, or simply needing them to show some passionate emotion. You unknowingly triggered their deepest childhood wound. To a securely attached person, intimacy feels like a warm blanket. But to a high-functioning avoider, intimacy feels like a suffocating weight. It feels like losing the only thing that has ever kept them safe, their independence. And so, the invisible wall goes up. They don't leave you physically. They just check out. They become a little more focused on work. They spend a little more time on their phone. When you try to have a deep conversation, they give you perfectly logical, polite, but entirely hollow answers. You are sitting right next to them on the couch, but it feels like you are trying to hug a ghost. This leads to the most painful, exhausting cycle in relationship psychology, the anxious avoidant trap. When your partner shuts down, you panic. Your brain registers their silence as abandonment. So what do? You push. You ask more questions. You raise your voice. You cry. You say, "Why won't you just talk to me? Why are you pushing me away?" You are desperately throwing stones at their wall, just hoping they will look out the window. But remember the biology we talked about in Chapter 2. The more you push for connection, the more their nervous system perceives you as a lethal threat. You are no longer their loving partner. To their brain, you are the predator cornering them. So they retreat further into the ice. They give you the silent treatment. Not because they want to manipulate you or torture you, but because their emotional circuit breaker has completely blown. It is a devastating tragedy of misinterpretation. One person is starving for a connection, and the other person is suffocating from it. If you are the one doing the shutting down, you have to understand the catastrophic collateral damage of your silence. You think you are keeping the peace by not arguing. You think you are being the bigger person by staying quiet and letting it blow over. But to the person who loves you, your silence is not peaceful. It is deafening. It is a slow, psychological starvation. You are protecting yourself from a fire that isn't there, and in the process, you are freezing the person you love to death. There is a fundamental law in physics that applies perfectly to human psychology. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms. So, I want you to ask yourself a very serious question. What happens to all the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, and the grief that you successfully swallowed over the years, just to keep the peace? It doesn't just evaporate into the air. If you don't express it outward, your body absorbs it inward. This brings us to the most dangerous phase of being a high-functioning avoider. When chronically angry people get upset, they explode. It is messy, it is loud, and it causes collateral damage to everyone around them, but the pressure inside them is ultimately released. You, however, do not explode. You implode. You quietly collapse inward under the crushing weight of your own unexpressed needs. In clinical psychology, we call this the somatic toll. When your brain refuses to speak your truth, your body will eventually speak for it. That chronic, unexplainable fatigue you feel every morning, that tension in your jaw, the mysterious stomach issues, the sudden migraines, or the insomnia that hits you at 3 a.m., that is not just stress from work. That is the physical manifestation of 10 years of biting your tongue. Your nervous system is keeping the score, and the bill is past due. You are experiencing a very specific, agonizing type of exhaustion, the burnout of the perpetually smiling person. The sheer amount of psychological energy it takes to constantly monitor the room, to anticipate everyone else's moods, and to actively suppress your own fight or flight response is staggering. You are running a supercomputer on a dying battery, and eventually, the battery dies, which leads us to the most misunderstood, shocking behavior of the high-functioning avoider, the silent exit. To the outside world, and to your partner, it looks completely ruthless. One day, you are in a long-term relationship, nodding along, acting like everything is totally fine. And the next day, you pack your bags, close the door, and leave. No screaming match, no warnings. You just ghost the relationship, the friendship, or the career. People will call you cold-hearted. They will say you never truly cared. But the devastating truth is the exact opposite. You cared so much, you absorbed so much of everyone else's emotional weight, that your internal framework simply snapped. You didn't leave because you suddenly stopped loving them. You left because your survival system hit absolute zero. You walked away in pure silence, not to punish them, but because you literally had no more of yourself left to give. But here is the hardest pill to swallow. Walking away doesn't fix the core issue. You just take the same exhausted, terrified nervous system into the next relationship, waiting for the cycle to repeat. Wearing this mask of the chill, low-maintenance person is no longer protecting you. It is slowly eating you alive. You have spent your entire life building this invisible wall. It kept you safe when you were a child. It helped you survive. So I am not going to sit here and tell you to take a sledgehammer and tear it down in a single day. That would completely shatter your nervous system. Instead, I just want you to open a very small window. Healing an avoidant attachment style and thawing a frozen nervous system does not mean forcing yourself to scream, cry, or perfectly articulate your deepest traumas in the middle of an argument. It starts with something much smaller. In psychology, we call these micro-disclosures. The next time you feel the ice creeping in, when your partner is talking, and you feel your throat tightening, your heart rate dropping, and your brain going completely blank, I want you to stop trying to force yourself to just speak. Instead, you need a bridge phrase. Something incredibly simple that you have memorized beforehand. You look at them and you say, I am feeling completely overwhelmed right now. My brain is shutting down. I am not abandoning you, and I am not mad at you, but I need 20 minutes of pure silence before I can continue this. Do you realize how powerfully healing that is? In just 3 sentences, you have stopped the anxious avoidant trap in its tracks. You have reassured your partner that you aren't ghosting them, which stops their panic. And most importantly, you have given your own nervous system the permission to step back and breathe, without carrying the guilt of running away. For your entire life, you have believed that you had to be the strong, silent, low-maintenance rock for everyone else. You believed that your messy, complicated, and inconvenient emotions made you a burden. But the truth is, your flawless perfection is exactly what is keeping you so terribly lonely. Real intimacy is not found in being chill. It is found in the absolute courage to let someone see you when you are terrified, overwhelmed, and completely imperfect. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to be exhausted. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. If you are the one who shuts down, I want you to stop carrying the weight of this alone. If you don't have the words to explain what is happening inside your head, let this video speak for you. Send this to the person who loves you. Let them see the invisible war you have been fighting. Let them help you thaw the ice. Thank you for being here, and for finally letting yourself be seen. If this video gave you the clarity you have been searching for, please subscribe, and remember, your silence kept you safe in the past, but your voice is what will set you free today.